Hey, we're live. Kim.
Hello.
We are we're live and we made it.
We made Ooh, here's just survival of the fittest.
Oh, yes. I got my tea. You got your hydration there. What the hell is going to happen tonight? I have no idea.
How exciting. I just learned last night it's not Mercury in retrograde right now. It's Mercury in retro shade.
All right, I'm bringing us back. Okay, hold on. Before we get started, we got to start this thing in a good way. Let's get started in a good way. Let's come back. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Red Hoop Talk. I'm Shannon O'Loughlin. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the executive director and attorney for the Association on American Indian Affairs. And to my...
over here.
This way. Kim, introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Metler, and I am a citizen of the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation, and I am CEO and coach of Heart River Coaching. Welcome to our little show.
Yes, thank you. And one more time, Roy Melendez, our regular co-host and my friend for 30 years. His father passed away last week and was not able to be with us last week or this week, but should be back on track with us next week. So please send your empathies and sympathies his way. Good prayers for him and his family as they recover from losing their father. When we spoke about his father, I think on the very first show when Kim was our guest on the show.
Yeah, we did.
It was a father's kind of conversation that was really interesting. So without further ado, let me also recognize the land that I stand on is that of the Piscataway peoples in Maryland and the DMV area. What about you, Kim?
I am coming to you live from Kumeyaay Territory, Southern California.
Yay, Southern California.
Yay.
And you guys are just sick of COVID by now, right?
We are sick with COVID. Yeah, we are sick of COVID. There's we unfortunately have been experiencing some of the rollbacks. Thought we were making progress, but I believe I read somewhere we're the highest in the nation right now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess, woo, way to go, California. Woo, woo. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm trying to stay positive, and I'm finding that lots of my practice right now is focused on just kind of supporting people where they're at. Like everything, we have our good days and we have our difficult days. And I feel like a lot of us are having some difficult days right now. So
yeah, they really are. We really are. And just confusing days. It's, I don't even know. And maybe we shouldn't start at that place yet. I know COVID across Indian country is still of large concern. Numbers are still going up at Navajo Nation, but not only Navajo. Remember, there's 574 federally recognized tribes, and about 300 other tribal groups. All of them are doing their best to protect themselves. Many are closing off reservation boundaries or providing checkpoints where they're doing health checks and other things at those checkpoints. Some governments, like in South Dakota, have issue with tribes trying to protect themselves in this way. Others are grateful that the tribes are able to enforce those types of restrictions and help keep people safe and healthy. Any weird COVID news? I heard a good joke, if I remember it.
I think we could use a good joke. I think we could use a good joke.
You own too many cars. Oh, I forgot the punchline. You own too many cars. That's because I have the car owner virus. Oh, that's so bad. I can't tell. Did you get it?
I totally got it.
I'm an Indian without any sense of humor. I'm not sure what happened.
I'm so thrilled because the title of the bad joke teller just went to someone else.
Are you not good at that?
I'm telling the joke though. I am going to tell that joke.
Oh yeah. Well, it is pretty good.
It's a good joke.
Owner virus.
Car owner virus. There's some parts in the country where that is an accent, and so that made perfect sense.
Hey, if you're not sure what I'm doing right now, everybody, we have a wonderful guest scheduled with us. For some reason, we can't find her. So I am desperately trying to text her to make sure she can get. Oh, someone laughed. I hope that's that's not because Alli hasn't joined us yet, but because of the joke, right? Right, Johnny?
I'm going to say it's because of the joke. Yeah, I just pulled up. This was a new thing I discovered that I also can actually see the comments. I want to say hey to our relatives over there, Sioux, Arapaho, Ute, Cheyenne, over in Colorado. How you doing?
That's JD. JD is always with us. And
JD, nice to meet you, JD. Are you my cousin? I advertise these, by the way, by telling on my social media. I always say, hey, join us. Find out if they're my cousin. So tonight we're going to find out if Allie's my cousin. Probably not.
Oh, well,
but you know,
we may never know if she doesn't show up. Wait, she says she's backstage. I know what. She's in the wrong staging area. Wrong link.
Oops.
Wrong link. Okay, let me send her a text. Here, keep them going.
I was just going to say, shout out here, Johnny, to Hopi Zuni. How you doing? Hi. Relatives in our Southwest. I'm a fan of the jewelry. Was that like rude for me to say that? I am. I can't deny it. Gorgeous jewelry. Love the jewelry. We're all cousins. Yes, we are all cousins. And
do we want to be all cousins? I mean,
well, sometimes
you don't want to say that, do you?
I'll tell you a story. One time I was visiting my auntie, Roberta, may she rest in peace, and she took me to the casino. And as we're going through the casino, my head was literally just on a spindle, back and forth. And I said, Auntie, I wish you would have told me. I would have brought my lipstick. And she says, my girl, who are you looking at? And so I pointed, I was like, that one. And she goes, oh, no, that's your cousin. This is how you're related. So I picked a different one, and she's like, oh, no, that's your cousin. This is how she says, my girl, when you come here, you're going to have to bring your own.
Where do you get them, though? Where do you get them?
That's what I'd like to know.
Oh, man. Oh, well, I actually shouldn't be saying that. I'm married. So, Kim, you talk. You talk like that.
I can talk like that because I'm not married.
Did everyone hear that? Kim's not married. Johnny Monty's there says we're all related and it's all love.
It's
Isn't
true.
That sweet? Thank you, Johnny.
It is. It is.
He's watching from Facebook.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I've got this. Okay. Alli is here. I see her in the green room, Alli. We'll bring you up in a bit.
Hi, Alli. Can't wait.
Oh, God. Okay. So before we go there, hello, Chad. Nice to see you. I wanted to bring up an issue that I thought maybe our folks who comment and are listening and who maybe are listening and who don't usually comment, maybe you'll want to comment about this. The Association on American Indian Affairs constantly gets inquiries from people who have just taken their DNA test and their ancestry or whatever DNA test they take shows that they're Native American in some percentage, and some quite a lot. So what we usually do at the association is we send them to our website where we have information on ancestry that basically says there's 574 federally recognized tribes and about 300 other non-recognized tribal nations and groups. A DNA test won't tell you if you're affiliated with a particular tribe. And the U.S. doesn't regulate that. Tribal enrollment and citizenship is based on your tribal nation. So unless you do your genealogy or by some other way are able to, retrace your ancestry and talk to that tribe you're affiliated with and find out what their particular enrollment rules are, we can't help you. And then the other question is, well, but I want my Indian check. I want my compensation. Isn't there compensation? And it got me to thinking about all the myths that are out there about what it means to be Indian. So, one of the reasons why we're doing this show, Kim, is because we wanted everyone in the general public to see what real Indians look like, what we do for a living, the things that we talk about, and to just chat it up. I'm still confused by some of the myths that are out there. Does anyone else have a myth that they hear a lot, or what about you, Kim? Do you have any stories?
So one of my day hustle is I do training and technical assistance on the Indian Child Welfare Act. And so I regularly train social workers. And one of the things that I heard recently, which really kind of blew my mind, is this woman said, will you teach me how to visit a reservation? Because I want to go to a real reservation. The only place I've ever been is Pechanga here. And of course I have to, maintain. And I said, well, Pechanga's a reservation. And she said, no, I want to visit a tribe like the ones with the teepees and the horses that have real culture. And I literally was standing there going, so I think there's still an idea out there of kind of the Hollywood Indian, this, which is weird and it's hard to understand in this day and age. But I think there's still this picture out there of who Native people are. And there's still this belief that those that still exist are living in teepees with horses and don't have, running water or, any access to any modern amenities or anything like that. So
yeah. And our stories and the real stories about who we are aren't often heard. I want to and I think we have a lot of stories on this issue. I want to make sure that I remember to talk about your podcast real quick, because I think it's kind of related. Do you think it's kind of related to what we're talking about?
It's some of it, yeah.
It's kind of, sort of.
It's kind of, sort of. We have our moments.
So this is
yes.
Sass and Nosh. And so tell us about this, Kim.
So Sass and Nosh, my lovely co-host is a woman named Alex, and her people, she is indigenous from south of the border down in Mexico. Alex, forgive me if I get this wrong. I believe her heritage is the Nahuatl people. Sorry, Alex, if I got it wrong. But she is my co-host, and we have this podcast called Sass and Nosh, which is available. Sass and Nosh. And basically, it's two indigenous women getting all sassy, and we have snacks. And so we talk about a lot of different things. We try to share. The reason why we have food is because we are food cultures, right? Indigenous folks. So in some ways, we want to decolonialize food. So we bring our snacks and talk about them. And you can catch us here on the platform, which is Anchor FM. But we also are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and a couple others. So pretty easy to find. Check us out.
That's cool.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah. In addition to her Heart River coaching that we talked about last time, I did want to shout out on Sass and Nosh.
Thank you.
And we were getting some more comments from folks talking about being Indian.
Being Indian.
In Indian checks, taxes, one central Native leader that can speak on behalf of all Natives. What are we saying here, Chad?
That we get Indian checks. That's, I think, so I'm guessing. Chad, please feel free to comment here. I think he's like, yeah, the Indian check. We don't ever pay taxes.
We don't pay taxes.
We don't pay taxes, which, that's an Indian law thing, and we won't get into that, but we're going to say that's a myth.
Mm-hmm. One central Native leader.
This is a big thing, right? Well, and there's one guy we all go to lead us, but that's also like when you hear people say the Native American culture, mm-hmm. There's not a Native American culture. There are 500 and some federally recognized tribes. There's how many unrecognized tribal nations in this country? There's not one Native culture. We are not a homogenous single people. So yeah, just like the same thing with our languages. We don't speak Native American. We don't speak Indian. Well, some people do, but it's like the language of the nation that they come from.
Right.
And they call it that too, right? Those elders. I speak Indian.
Well, and then they're speaking Indian. Where you don't have to use any words.
That's right.
It's over there. Do that. How's your lip action?
Do you know that 1 year, I love this. I love when our elders get on Facebook. They had a lip pointing contest at the senior center.
That's beautiful.
It was the best thing I've ever seen. So those of you who are elders at your senior center, the elder services, please do that. It's the best thing ever.
So that might be a good transition to our guests, talking about elders.
Yes.
So our guest that we're going to have tonight has been working in film, multimedia. She's a public speaker. She's a documentary filmmaker. She's a family historian. And a lot of the work that she does today has to do with keeping our stories alive, and also documenting the words of our elders so that we know how to live our lives in the future. She has such a career in broadcasting and filmmaking, and I'm not going to get all into it, but she's worked for them, a lot of non-Indian companies. So she comes to us with a lot of experience that's broad and diverse, and she's still able to do the things that she thinks are important to do for her culture and her people. Her name is Alli Joseph. She's a citizen of the Shinnecock Nation, which is a tribe that is in, what's that place? The Hamptons. It's in the Hamptons. So we'll probably talk about some of those issues. So let me bring up Miss Alli Joseph. Yay, everybody clap. Everybody clap.
Hello, women. Oh, look,
Hello.
Our phone that never rings is ringing. Great.
Of course.
I don't even know where it is. That's oh, good. Somebody picked it up. How are you? You looking lovely and radiant.
Oh, well, everyone got their hair going on. We all
I have the, no, you got your hair like it looks like you used a curling iron and a product. Mine is what I call the quarantine hair.
The au naturel.
I'm letting it run. It's like it's going to be a mane by the winter to keep me warm.
But what kills me, there's so many Native people, I was going to say Native women, we have curly, wavy hair. And like there's this, but there, we also have this straight, and we're so diverse. Look at us. We don't all.
I embrace my mom was African American as well. So she had in the 70s a beautiful full on Angela Davis afro. So that, and yet I didn't get, I got kind of this, which is, some version of chemically altered and real, but I never blow it out because who has the time and who cares? I won't do my hair for on camera unless they pay someone to do it for me because I don't really care. Maybe that's why I'm farther along. So I was just, chomping at the bit here on some of those earlier comments. And someone had asked me at least once or twice if, we live in teepees and stuff. So I always have a chuckle. Teepees in the Hamptons.
And so that's, exactly. Teepees in the Hamptons. But they've got to be some really high quality teepees out there.
I guess. I don't know. I don't have one. I'll report that.
I visualize there like the props for the big parties, like the themes. Wasn't there something like that about, like get your teepee for, you can go
for glamping? That's
glamping.
There's your economic development, Shinnecock Nation.
Ooh,
glamping. Well, we did host, on our powwow grounds, which sadly this year, not to be sobering because this is fun and we can all laugh, but it's the first year our nation won't have our annual powwow because of COVID, and it's just limited to tribal members. But it would be the first year, as I'm fairly certain I'm correct about this, in 80 years. So it's kind of a heartbreaker, especially because it's a primary revenue stream, for a lot of tribal members who are vendors. But our tribe does have some great economic development going on as well under our recent leadership. So that's wonderful. But anyway, you're the interviewers. You tell me what you want to talk about.
Oh my, she's giving us some power here.
I'm usually the interviewer, so I'll just sit here.
You're gonna say, well, by no means do we have the experience that you do, Alli. And so what my big question is just how did you, some of the places that you've worked in, CBS, NBC, People Magazine, the freaking Food Network, like how?
Hey. Yeah, that was an adventure right there. But you can finish your
How did you start it as a little, and you're not just Shinnecock. So if you want to talk a little bit about who you are and where you come from, and how you got to be where you are today, I'd really like to hear that story.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thank you. I always find that a really interesting question. And for a lot of people, it's difficult to answer because I think for all of us, no matter what our work is, it's a winding road, right? And paths diverge and converge. And sometimes we make different choices that lead us different places. I never had, unlike maybe the smarter people, a goal plan of like, I want to be, when I'm grown up, this level in television or documentary filmmaking or as an author. I've always been something of a create an opportunity as I go. And so I grew up in New York City. I call myself easily a city Indian. Some people might say urban Indian, and come out of the sort of school of the American Indian Community House in Manhattan. And, people are often surprised to hear that they're indigenous people in urban environments. It's not a surprise to those of us who live there. But yeah, I grew up on the East Village in New York City, which, back then was not called the East Village. It was not bougie. It did not attract, investment bankers to the rental market. And I had two teachers for parents who were, wonderful people. One of them is still with us, and nobody was in media really that I knew. But I had a fantastic writing teacher when I was 7 years old who taught me a lot about writing, and I became very engaged with that. And so I was really a print writer or a digital writer before I even went into television. But I always had a desire to be on camera and to tell stories. And so I started out in the first wave of the internet, working for Prodigy, to date myself, when it was bigger than AOL. Do you remember when internet first started and you beep, boop, 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 and they would dial up and it sounded like somebody running on the treadmill to get the internet going, you know? And so that, like, I'm that old school. And I led some of the first chats for Prodigy in this cavernous, Web 1.0 office space in in Soho in New York. And I would sit there at 8:00. I probably shouldn't say this on like Indian TV, but I would sit there at 8:00 alone, leading the first chats that ever existed, explaining to people how to exist in the digital universe and communicate in this new media and sort of be reasonable to each other. And I would sit there with my feet up on the desk all alone. The office building was closed with like a 40. And that's why I said I would tell you Indian folks talking about stuff like this. But but it was like really formative for me, and it was my first job, and is as a content creator. And I went on from there to create content for a lot of the digital outlets and the digital magazine arms of some of the bigger magazines you may know. And I was a stringer for People magazine, as you mentioned, which was those were my red carpet days. So I would interview celebrities, and go to fancy parties at night, and I kind of lived on hors d'oeuvres and champagne, which sounds really fancy, but it's sort of like a bare bones salad days existence, because you can't afford anything else. So you just eat at the parties. And and then I transitioned to television news after the first web collapse, and started working in the personal history field more recently than that. About a decade ago, I lost more than that now, almost 12 years. I lost my mom prematurely to an aggressive cancer. And she had always been the keeper of the stories, which is, I hope, a nice segue into the work that I have loved to do over the last decade, and something that engages a lot of Native women in being the keepers of the stories and those who pass the stories down. And so when I lost my mom, I felt that I had failed her in not getting all of her stories in time in the way that I should have. And I had no children at that time. I didn't really have a vested interest, though she would ask me about it. And so I thought that I could create a stream of content for people so that this would never happen to them. My loss would be someone else's gain. And that's how I started Seventh Generation Stories. And I've been doing family story saving since then, with some documentary work and television news online and on air ever since. And it's really very gratifying. To me, it's the most important, favorite work that I do. Oh yes, thank you. There's my website.
I'm gonna also get the website. I'm gonna paste it in our chat room. So
okay. I can't see any chatting. Is that because is anyone talking? I don't see any chat.
You don't see any chats on there?
Oh, now I'm in comments. Hello, people.
Comments.
That's
there they are. Hello. Yeah. So there are a lot of conversations now. I just took a super cursory glance at some of the comments, but about identity in this country now, and who is Indian and who looks which way, and especially in the tragic events of the last few months, conflated with COVID, like, just things are a mess.
Yeah, things are a mess, and things are a mess. And I think, in terms of, Native identity, I'm on Twitter, and I found Native Twitter, which is a very interesting and informative place to visit. And it's interesting to see what that conversation looks like that has been spurred by the protests, the Black Lives Matter, resurgence that we've seen, and it's really interesting because here, we're in this place where we are post Indian Adoption Project, and we are in this group of folks that have post the boarding schools and all of these things that have happened in our history. we're the next generation of this. And there's lots of folks through no choice of their own that have been disconnected from culture. And so, you know, to see the complexity of who we are as Native people, who we are anyway. I mean, how, you know, as we were just talking about the number of tribal nations, recognized and non-recognized, but, you know, our stories and our histories are so varied and so rich, and the idea of Native identity is such a complex conversation.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, another complex issue I think someone raised in the comments was disenrollment. Being a, you know, this oppression that we're doing to ourselves through our tribal governments as well. So the problems with identity are just so complex, and I'm just grateful that a bunch of women like us and our viewers, you know, we can all sit down together and have conversations about these issues outside of any political whatever or motive. It's just a discussion like I grew up around, right? Around the table, everyone's smoking cigarettes and drinking this weak ass coffee. Did y'all's family have that weak ass coffee that would just have, you would just brew it, you know, all day, and it was just weak Maxwell House or some Folgers or something, and just talk about the world and life and gossip. And anyway, let's get back to Alli. I'm getting off the beaten track.
I didn't have any weak ass coffee. That wasn't my parents. Were New York coffee snobs. No, there was no Maxwell House in my house, and there isn't today. I'm very down to earth about most things, but I don't play with coffee.
But don't play with coffee.
Well, yeah,
but I like that idea of, you know, gathering, and that's something that we don't see a lot of, I think, outside of the communities where people still really live together and engage on a daily basis. When I counsel non-Indians about doing family story saving work, one of the real challenges is that in a lot of cultures, people don't keep their elders close. They, you know, send them to facilities and homes, and not everybody can give the care that is needed and, you know, keep the elders physically with them. But I noticed that there's a real disconnect when, you know, grandma and granddad don't live nearby, and they aren't able to share wisdom and stories with the children. So, you know, part of the story saving that I do, I feel has a lot of intrinsic value, because even after folks are gone, when I do video versus say a, you know, book piece, but their words and the cadence and the, you know, the inflection with which they speak is passed on, because, you know, books are great, but you have to use your imagination a lot more to figure out and remember how someone dear to you sounds.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings your 7-Gen stories and the work that you're doing there kind of brings us to the work that is most recent that you're involved in. Do you want me to play that real quick?
Sure, that'd be wonderful. Do you want to give it a little intro so people know what they're looking at? Do we have a lot of people? I can't see how many people are here.
Right now, I see that 12 people are watching, which comes and goes. It rises and falls.
Okay.
And remember that
I shared on Facebook, and I shared on Twitter, and I shared on LinkedIn. Yeah. So hopefully you get some repeat views afterwards.
Definitely. It definitely goes up and down during our show. Okay, I'm going to pull it up. And is it up there? All right, let me see.
Yes, it is. So shall I give a little intro?
Yeah, give a little intro before we get started.
So what Shannon's referring to and what you all see on your screen is a trailer for what we call long short documentary that is meant to be one in a series of 10 or 12 of elder stories across Indian country, of tribal elders telling their stories and what has mattered to them throughout their lives. And one of the things Brian Downey, who is an English photographer and filmmaker and a friend of mine I teamed up with, who lives near our reservation in the East End of New York on Long Island, was very invested in, was having this be a single take type of experience. So for those of you watching who aren't as familiar with how interviews are usually done and what you see in documentaries and sometimes on television, often things are very edited, and there will be many takes, we call them, to get the right soundbite and the right wording that the person says. And sometimes we'll ask people to restate their sentence. Could you start something with I was blah, blah, blah versus it was 1959, for example. And here we didn't do that. And we did that very intentionally. Whatever we got, you know, that what you used to hear in kindergarten, you get what you get, you don't get upset. And it provided a very raw, honest piece that are the elders, the way that they are and the way that they sound, and they were situated in their own environment. So this first pilot has been accepted at a number of film festivals here, and it's been applied abroad. I think it was accepted at a Cannes, France festival, not DCon, but a world festival near there. And a lot of stuff has been scuttled due to COVID. However, the South Orange Maplewood International Film Festival, which was supposed to be live but was made virtual, will be running films online. They made it all virtual in September, and this will show as a local long short, since that's the area that I live in when I'm not on res. And the first try that we did was mine, was the Shinnecock, because it was close, and Brian has relationships there and has photographed in portraiture a lot of the folks that you see here. So he's made his own relationships with people in my extended family. And since this filming, and again, this is the trailer, and we have the full piece is about 30 minutes. He has visited Navajo country and interviewed some of the last remaining code talkers, which to me is so hugely important, in their own language. So we have Navajo Downey, and we have a series of other nations lined up to film as soon as we have raised a little bit more money, because documentary filmmaking is generally almost without exception a labor of love. And unless you have a big network paying for things, which we do not at this moment, but maybe that will change, you have to sort of cobble things together. And so, lest you think I'm some big city slicker, documentary filmmakers like max out their credit cards, and like sell stuff in their house to make what they hope are meaningful stories. So this is called 1,000 Years of Witness, and you will see all the photographs in it are Brian Downey's, and this is the first in what we hope will be a series of 10 or so that we'd like to have archived in the Library of Congress and make available for education. And the other thing I'll note is that this is not a narrative piece, the whole thing. So it's sort of very artistic, but I hope you'll agree. It's thoughtful and it's kind of touching. So
All right.
Hope you like it.
Let me play.
We Indians were still wards of the state then. We were not federally recognized until just recently, past couple of years.
He was either taken away from here and put into a boarding house.
During those times, there wasn't a lot of people around back then, but we didn't have a lot, but we made do with what we had.
See, in the old days, you used to know who was driving by before they even got here, because everybody's car had a different sound.
Say is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it sure did, because we're strong today and having survived our childhood.
So that's that.
Wow.
Wow, how beautiful.
No, thank you. Yeah, the visuals are all Brian. He's really gifted visual artist, and I did forget to mention in my excitement that we could share this here that you may have noticed that the ages of all of the elders add up to 1,000. So the reason the piece is called 1,000 Years of Witness is that we hope in all of the short films, the ages of the elders add up as close to 1,000 as we can. That means generally octogenarians, nonagenarians, if we're lucky, a centenarian, and some septuagenarians. And then we hope to have a child, one kid that we pick from the nation at the end to say something about what they've learned from their elders. And if you watch the full piece, we have a child who was 6 at the time.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
That's really powerful. Mm-hmm.
So we like to tie it all together in the 7th generation kind of philosophy.
Family stories are so important. And those of us who live in an urban environment who often don't, like myself, I don't get to go to Oklahoma that often, and I certainly don't get to go anytime soon. I really miss being around those stories from your relations, from your relationships, to help keep you grounded and remember who you are, where you came here, what you came here for, and what you're supposed to be doing. I'm the matriarch of my family. I'm going to be 52 on Tuesday, by the way, my birthday.
Hi,
Happy
birthday girl.
You're not an elder yet. Isn't it weird? Like, when did I get old? I don't know what happened.
That's a whole nother conversation.
I'm only 29, so I don't know what you're talking about.
How is that for you?
It's rough.
Yeah, I know.
These wrinkles, I'm fighting them already.
But I don't understand what it means to be in a position where I'm the matriarch of the family and what I'm supposed to be doing, because everyone passed away too early, and so I'm still struggling to find my identity as a matriarch, or whatever that means. But anyway, I don't know how you two women are having success as matriarchs, but Alli, with all your storytelling, I think that it's got to keep you close and connected and close to culture when you're doing this type of work.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. I try to marry, what I've learned in my own family and my own experience as a mother, and remembering a lot of what my late relatives on my mom's side shared and taught me. My grandmother Jane is my daughter, partially my daughter's, is her middle name. And I just, it's amazing to see what my shadowy brain can recall from from childhood, that all of these amazing women created for us, and the hardships that they went through so that I could have opportunities. And a lot of them have left a really big imprint on not just me, but I know my younger cousins, some of whom are doing really fantastic things at Shinnecock. My cousin Jeremy Dennis is a really talented photographer, and he has taken on himself, it's gotten some press lately, the project of restoring his late grandmother's house, that was my grandmother Jane's little sister Loretta, and it's right across the road from my house on Res, and it has fallen into some disrepair over the years and has been sitting vacant. And so he decided he was going to try to raise some money and restore it as an artist space, which is really fascinating and a great undertaking, and did a Kickstarter, and seen him over there working. And it's just beautiful because the legacy of Ma, as she was called, her name was Loretta, but everyone called her Ma, was that it would be a place to gather. And on her property there. She used to hold little mini powwows and have, folks come from all over to celebrate culture, which I don't remember. I think that predates me, but I certainly spent a lot of time in that house with my grandmother and absorbed a lot of her wonderful personality and, her stories about growing up Shinnecock. So, yeah, I can't celebrate it enough. Oh, my cousin Denise is on. She said Ma's house. So Denise grew up there. That's one of Ma's daughters. And Jeremy is her son. So we're all very proud of the work that he's done. And her daughter is a phenomenal tribal attorney. And just for the Jewish half, I'm kvelling. And Curtis is on. Hi, Curtis. It's so nice to me. I'm a ball of energy. Talent is, I suppose that's subjective, but thank you. I have a lot of energy. I have the See, now here's the thing. I don't know if this is Indian or where this comes from, but I got the stamina of people half my age. I see 20-year-olds dragging their ass around. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You got no problems. Mm-hmm. I just pretty much, it's like a shark. If you don't sit down, that was my grandmother, Jane. She said, do not sit down until you have nothing to do, because you might not get up. And I never forgot that.
Wow, that's a good one.
So after this interview, I might not get up. I sat down.
It's true though. Yeah.
But generally I keep moving. So, there's that whole sleep when you're dead thing. I don't know if that's going to work out for me, by the way, but.
Well, why not? Why not?
Find out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So what else can I help folks with? If you have anybody watching who wants to save their family stories, or, I have a very broad and diverse resume, which is unusual. And I'm in awe of the work that you guys do too. We're all just so different and skilled, and I would love to do more work in nonprofit. As you may have mentioned in the intro, I don't remember, I'm on the Council of Advisors for the organization, and I'm happy and proud to be supportive in any way that I can, and hope that I get to help with the anniversary coming up.
Yeah, our 100th year anniversary.
Wow, 100 years?
Yeah, the association was founded in 1922. So back when there was nothing but assimilation and allotment, right? There was nothing but the vanishing Indian policy. So our founders, basically, who are all rich white people from New York, by the way, were progressive thinkers and really turned Indian policy in a different direction, and were able to influence thinking that tribes needed to be sovereign and self-determinative. Which was incredible for that time. And so the association has been working in that vein ever since. Going to be 100 years old. We're going to have our 6th annual Repatriation Conference. So we talk about, this is the 30th anniversary of NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which we've talked about a bit on the show from time to time. It's going to be the 30th anniversary. We are going to have a repatriation conference. It's going to be completely virtual, but it will happen. And so you can see that on our website. But Alli, you are intimately involved in repatriation and protection of cultural resources at Shinnecock, and even did a documentary about it, right?
I would say I supported the creation of a documentary about it. It was not my film, but I was proud to be a producer on Conscience Point, which is a film, a PBS documentary on Independent Lens that aired last November, directed by Trevor Wormveld, and it is a beautiful film that she did a fantastic job with. And we had a couple of Shinnecock producers, and it did a few film festivals last year. And I don't believe you can, unfortunately, stream it for free right now. However, it is available through a distributor called Women Make Movies. And if you are an educator and you would like to show it to your students, non-native or native. I know that would be a great opportunity to share about our people's history and the struggles that we've had in the richest, whitest summer community in the United States, or certainly one of them. The Hamptons, for those who are unfamiliar, is a very unique place in so many ways, with amazing natural resources that have been eclipsed by huge mansion developments. Like, I almost can't even describe it. It's so weird. Like, it just doesn't sound right. But the east end of Long Island was, of course, originally Shinnecock territory and Montauk territory, and it has become, many years ago, the summer destination for the very wealthy folks. Of course, that's where the Paris Hilton and the Kim Kardashians and God, when they come in, we all just cringe. It's like the folks in the res, like, we don't want to go into town. It's like the summer people are there, and I have friends with a lot of those summer people. So I've always had the luxury of going between worlds, which is a whole other discussion. But I'm very aware of that's a privilege that I have. And so being able to work on Conscience Point was amazing, because it was a way on a national broadcast platform to tell the Shinnecock story of my cousin Becky Genia and a number of other Shinnecock, and their efforts over many years to try to protect our ancestral burial grounds from developments for these McMansions. And the thing is, there had prior to never been any laws to protect digging up land. So the territory legally has no longer been Shinnecock's for many, many years. And therefore, somebody buys a piece of land, right? They say, I paid millions of dollars for this, and I'm going to dig it up and build my house, right? Normally, that in Western parlance is fine, but not so when you are in Indian land. And pretty much anywhere you dig, especially in a certain area of the geography, is likely to have remains. And so the film is largely about Becky's efforts over a number of years, many, many years actually, to enact graves protection legislation, and the tremendous amount of time and effort that she and other family members have spent in the courts trying to engage the town and essentially implore them to create some kind of legislation, so that if a developer finds something in their digging, that they do the right thing, that it is that Native folks are allowed to have ceremony, that the town buys the land back and puts it in trust so that it can't be developed and preserved. And there's, so that's the thesis of Conscience Point. And it also does show the perspective of some of the locals who are non-Indian, who live there, who are working people. And they too can no longer afford to live in the Hamptons, even though they may have been there as farmers or baymen for generations.
And I was able to watch the documentary for free, thank goodness. So I got to watch it early. And it was really wonderful. And I wonder if anything has changed as far as getting the burial legislation passed.
It has, and they've made great progress in the town, as far as town of Southampton, with getting graves protection legislation enacted. I would have to refer to some of my cousins who are the attorneys there to get an exact day-to-day update. But I know that after the film came out, it ends on this kind of important but tragic note, where after they've had a small, I'm going to just spoiler alert if you ever see it, but basically, the film does show towards the end Becky going to court yet again, rather to the town, sorry, not to court, to the town, to a meeting, and to the elected officials of Southampton town. I keep saying court, I meant town, although we have gone to court as well. And that the town finally agreeing to create legislation. And, folks who have been crusading over the years, some of whom are also featured in the film, to applauding and, cheering that this has finally come to fruition after 30 years at least, certainly possibly more. And then to find out that the last scene, she's calling the town to say, hey, I'm still here. I haven't heard anything about, the next meeting where we are to collaborate on this legislation. So it really did leave it very intentionally in this place of, after all this, still there's nothing formalized. And so the long answer is yes, there's been progress. To my knowledge, there's not a formal law still on the books. And my cousin Tila Troge, who is another fine young tribal attorney woman, has been very active in that process as well. So my cousin, there she is. She says, the old COVID excuse. Yeah. So Denise, mother of Kelly, amazing attorney, says Southampton Town keeps deferring legislation because of new digging. Well, there's always new digging. And this is one of the larger tragedies of the entire thesis, right? Mm-hmm. It's like every time somebody buys some land, it's like none of this happened. And it's desperately unfair, of course, and should be illegal.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, I'm curious from your perspective. So way back a long time ago, I was a lawyer once. I'm recovering now.
Shannon, are you recovering?
I've never been able to heal or recover from that.
One of the last things that I worked on was cultural resources preservation, and there was a huge energy project going in. And one of the things that I always felt like I was banging my head against the wall is responding to the environmental impact statements and all of the government stuff. Thousands and thousands of dollars and hours of time compiling this cultural history of the people in the area. And of course, documentation of our history often looks different, things like tools that look like rocks or, whatever. And I always was so frustrated because I'd look at the folks that, whether it's the Board of Supervisors or the commissioners, and I'd be thinking, why can't you understand the importance of this to the people? And I'm curious how you see the storytelling and capturing these stories as a tool to help reframe for non-native decision makers these issues.
Mm-hmm. What's the question? Do I agree with you?
Well, how do you think the storytelling can be used to reframe and help non-Indian folks see these things as valuable the way that we see them? Or is that possible?
I think it's possible. I don't know if intrinsically that it's realistic that there will be an understanding, because it will not be their culture, much as I could, look at myself and say I could intellectually understand something from someone else's culture that they have explained to me and shown me. And if I'm an empathic person, I could say, I can see why that's important and I can get it. And maybe I would get it more because I care more about these things. I don't know. I don't want to make a value judgment, but I just think things can be very remarkably abstract if it isn't relevant to you personally, even if you're a smart person. And there's plenty of smart people who know about this stuff, and only a handful of them are giving money or donating their time to these causes. So I think one way that the storytelling helps, though, is when you have a large platform and you have a voice and you have the blessings that I've had to be able to have an audience, say on, salon.com, where I've been a host and a contributing editor for some years now. And they've allowed me to have on guests from Indian country and native artists and Dio Hala and my distant Shinnecock cousin, Camille Seaman, who's one of the most brilliant photographers I've ever known and seen the work of. She photographs icebergs in the Arctic. You've ever seen that?
Wow.
And just stunning photography, so gifted. So to have that platform is really a gift, because I think it gives an opportunity for non-Indians to hear about these issues of import and maybe get a different personal perspective on how it affects other people, and how something that looks to you like a rock is really a sacred object. And so, I can't make you care about it if you don't care. But
Right.
most people do care, interestingly, but they don't have exposure to the storytelling enough. And I think that's where we as Native people, if we want to affect change, have to be willing to share not necessarily sacred things, but more of our heritage from our perspective. I mean, because what Conscience Point really is, thanks to Treva, who is non-Indian, is the Shinnecock story largely from our perspective. And she is a white filmmaker, and she interviewed the town supervisor, and other folks in the town to give a balanced portrayal of the reality of events in our environment. And so I think that having stories on a national platform really is informative. And I had so many people tell me, I had no idea. I mean, you don't even know how many people are like, there's Indians in the Hamptons. What is that? I mean, if that's where we're still starting, then we really have a long way to go. And it's not for lack of we're still there for over 10,000 years. We never went anywhere. It's all the other folks who clog up the roads and come, to be on our historical land and exploit it and use it for what they will, and, enjoy the beauty of it and hopefully respect it.
How has the big electronic billboard?
The monument. Yes. So Shinnecock people refer to the billboard. Have you given any background on that, or are we diverting here?
It's been a while since we talked about it, so we haven't talked about it during this show. So go ahead and give a little warm up.
The short story is there is one, soon hopefully to be two, electronic billboards on which advertisements can go, and also PSAs and things which have, interestingly, now since COVID, all been like, support your police, and it's not going against the defund the police. So it's really interesting how it's become a mouthpiece for other points of view and other entities. But they are on a highway that leads to our traditional lands. And prior to this, other than the reservation, which is now a federal reservation, we were historically, as my relative says, Dorothy Stena says in the film, wards of the state of New York for many years. And in 2010, we were the 565th tribe to receive federal recognition, which I always think it's funny, and Shannon, you could speak, this is a tendril, if you will, but like to work in Washington and to be, with Mr. Cuckoo Man and, be like the only Indian to speak on some of those issues. And, I always thought it was funny that the Bureau of Indian Affairs had to tell us we're Indians. But anyway, so these billboards were put up, belong to our tribe, and they are a revenue source, and they don't hurt anybody. And they're sort of in a part of the highway that's not, there's some residences around it, but it's really on the edge of kind of like some forestry. And the amount of hullabaloo, I sound like I'm an 80-year-old white lady, but the hubbub, the fracas about the existence of these things was madness, because these were on our sovereign land. So the Shinnecock Reservation is a piece of property, but we have some other property that is also sovereign territory, which has been challenged many times, which is in like Hampton Bays, which is a little bit before Southampton. And therefore, people tried to challenge the positioning of these billboards to say that somehow it was illegal. It's not. So we built them anyway. And were sued, I believe, by the state of New York. Yeah. I mean, it's madness. Yeah. All over some signs, which the tribe called monuments, because they are the first time, right on the top, the seal of the Shinnecock Nation. And it's, as far as I know, the first time that the Shinnecock Nation has ever had its territory identified. publicly, other than when you drive up on the res, which nobody knows is there. There's no huge sign except when the powwow is coming to invite outsiders to come and partake of the festivities and to, learn about Indian culture. There's only a no trespassing. Like if you're not Indian, you can't come on here. But other than that, it's not, other than if you look at a map, like Google Maps, you wouldn't even know there were any Indians in the Hamptons. So the monument now has the tribal seal on the top, and folks were really proud of that. And I was as well.
Yeah. Just incredible. Has that with the issues of the burial legislation, has it ticked people off? Has it made it more difficult to politically for the nation, or has it actually helped?
I think that my sense of it, and I'm not enmeshed in it every day like some of my relatives are. I think it's quieted a bit, and it more recently was conceded to be allowed to be there. I wrote an op-ed about it that I'm actually looking to see if I can share. I wrote it in Newsday back in November, and I'm going to share you the link. Do I have those privileges as a
yeah, you can share screen. Actually, there's a button there on the bottom. You just share the. You don't have to share your whole screen, but just the news article.
Let me see if it lets people read it, because the person is, if you're not a subscriber, I can share it, but then you won't be able to read it. But here, I'll share it because there's a giant ad on the top. Come on, Newsday. All right, hang on. I'm going to share you my screen right here. There we go. Sharing. Okay, let's see. Did it work?
Nope.
No, why? I don't know why it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I haven't messed around with this application as yet, but it says screen sharing is easier with 2 members. But in any event, I can send you here, Shannon. I'll message you the link, and you wouldn't know that I had been working in the content side of technology for many years. Good Lord. Here, I'm going to drop it in the. Can I drop it in the comments? No.
Yeah, you can drop it in the comments.
Drop it in the private chat. There it is. Do you see it? So I wrote this op-ed with my cousin Shanae Bullock, who is an activist and an educator, and she has a cultural consulting company where she sometimes helps with NAGPRA disputes and things like that. And she is, I believe, currently the director of the new Shinnecock Economic Development Cannabis Project, which is amazing. And I'm not the person qualified to speak about that, but you could have her on as a guest, and she's an amazing guest and very media savvy, and has done many, many interviews. That is the monument. You can see that is the Great Shinnecock Seal, and that is I don't know if you can see, there it is on the highway. So who's that bothering? But Shanae and I wrote this piece back last, and we were trying to find the right time for it to land, because first I thought Independence Day, then I thought, Columbus Day, which my mom and I always call Genocide Day. And then, it seemed like leading up to, quote, American Thanksgiving, that would be a good time to talk about history and why this is not just a sign for us. And there's a graph in here that says the sign, which runs paid local ads, is really part of an American tradition to join the capitalist majority and to create economic self-reliance and be entrepreneurial, which frankly is an American ideal. And so yet historically, minority efforts to create economic opportunity have been thwarted by government and the public, all while many Americans complain about Indians' reliance on social services. So if you're interested, read it. I was pretty happy with it, and I hope that it helped change some minds and hearts out there.
Yeah, Judith is saying that the lawsuit challenging the sign isn't over. So
I bet that they just continue to resurrect it, and I think that there were several, if I'm not mistaken, but again, I am not the person best qualified to speak about the legal issues. I can certainly point you to someone who is, but I know that there's a second sign that I believe is in the process of being directly across the road, so that folks will see it on the other side. And I'm sure we'll have a fresh fracas when that one goes up.
Nice, very nice. And what I'm
bring the noise, bring the funk. Yes, let them come. We are still here.
And that the advertisements that are on these are like Cartier and all these fancy Hamptons like advertisers. So that's got to be a great opportunity for the Shinnecock Nation with economic development. I mean, you know, this much piece of land and you don't have to fill it with a casino or what have you.
Or cigarettes or,
Yeah.
you know, all these things that have become associated with Native folks. Hey, buy tax-free cigarettes. I mean, I don't really think tobacco, as we all know, is sacred, and I'm not sure that that is how most Native folks would like to be represented solely from a business standpoint. You know, I mean, it's great for the people who make that work and supports their families, but you know, we have so much more we can do with our knowledge of the land and preservation. We have had at Shinnecock, you know, Missoon resurrections for canoeing culture and canoe trips, and also other culturally derived, you know, business enterprises. There's a cannabis project. There's a lot of wampum artists. There's an oyster project many times over the years that my late mother was involved in to essentially reseed the bay, and you know, basically a hat tip to our heritage as people of the Stony Shore, which is what Shinnecock means, and to really, you know, continue to live off the land and resupply what is taken by outsiders out of the bay.
Well, you're really doing some incredible work in Indian country right now, Alli. Where do you see yourself going, or what would you like to do if you had a dream job? If you could,
are you hiring
in Indian country? Actually, I need a public affairs person. I don't think I can pay what.
I know we talked about. I'm happy to help. However, I need to pay the bills. But you know, I always believe in doing well by doing good, and you know, everyone has a different definition of well. And for me, it's really not exorbitant. So, I am. What's my dream job? I don't know. What's your dream job? You can't answer that.
I'm in my dream
You're
job.
in it. Okay, good.
I'm in my dream job.
Okay.
I just wish I had more money so I could do more work in Indian country. But you know, that's always the difficult for nonprofit and for anyone, I think.
You know what I would. You know what I honestly, I have this vision I shared with you. Do you remember the Magic Media Bus? We talked about it in the context of Native summer camps for res kids, but one of the things that has been important to me as a storyteller and not seeing enough Native representation on major media. Do you know that, I think I mentioned this to you, that great Hattie Kaufman, who is now retired, was, to my knowledge, the only Native national news broadcast anchor to present. There are Native folks working in newsrooms, certainly as reporters, but they are not in the top markets. And I just felt like if we could train Native youth to tell their stories from a very young age, because we are storytellers culturally, and boys too, that we would really be able to create a sea change in how Native people stand in this country, and the way that we can communicate our power and our authenticity. And so to create resources for Native kids, I have this idea to create a Magic Media Bus. It's a stupid name, but it's what I came up with. And basically it's like an Airstream or much bigger, sponsored by Google or another major corporate tech sponsor. So if anybody watches this back and you like this, you know, I'll DM me and I'll give you my number, and we will make this happen, because I am nothing if not an entrepreneur, and I love an opportunity to create something from nothing. But basically it would be outfitted with edit stations and cameras, and all this equipment is, you know, sponsored and donated by technology companies who want to preserve and support storytelling fly the first people in this country. And so that would, to run a program like that and to go all across Indian country and teach kids, our kids, how to tell their own stories for future generations, in the context of current modern world issues, domestic issues, political, environmental, social issues, would be amazing. So I would staff that. I would have mentors, many of whom are journalists in Indian country now, to, basically you got to reach a hand back to the folks coming up behind you. And, where would we be if nobody did that for us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there was a reason why I asked that question, and I was hoping that you would go there. I think that's such an amazing and beautiful idea. I know we're working on some National Native Youth Summer Camp work, and it would be really great to make that a reality.
Mm-hmm. I hope so. Well, we'll keep talking,
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll figure it out. And I just think that would be amazing, because the thing is, the reason there's less than 1% historically, I think the Ball State poll that I refer to a lot has been done year upon year, and there's always less than 1% of Native Americans in national newsrooms in this country. And so it just bothers me. It's like in the back of my head, scratching away, going, you have to personally change this somehow. And it's too late by the time kids get to high school, if I'm being frank. At college, it's too late. You really have to start when kids are, I think, in middle school, like 9, 10, 11, to get them engaged in caring about sharing their heritage for the future. And so being able to bring the mountain to Muhammad, so to speak, is my thinking here, because there's not ever going to be kids in mass from reservation communities able to access larger schools and expensive schools, and to travel, and to, there might be one or two, but that's not going to move the needle at all. So we have to bring the bus to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are 2 questions in the comments. Yeah. One was, setting up a fundraiser, and then, let's do that one first and then the other one.
Okay. Go for it, Kim.
A fundraiser auction. Go ahead.
Oh, with Native artists.
Yeah, the comment was just, could you set up a fundraiser auction with Native artists
to raise money for this program?
I think so. I think that's
what they mean.
Is addressing is that a possible fundraising idea. I know the association has been playing with that idea for some time now. It takes a lot of capacity to run an effort like that, and what you find with the resources that Alli has and the people that she works with, or even the resources that the Association on American Indians have, is very little. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we don't have the capacity to really pull off a good auction that's going to get out there and actually make some funding. It takes a lot of capacity to do a fundraiser like that. Kim, have you had any experience with doing fundraising besides making fry bread in law school?
Oh, we made some good fry bread. We made bank on that fry bread that we were making out there. And there's one organization, nonprofit that I worked with. They actually hired. It was expensive, and that's the thing is internally we didn't have the capacity to do the annual gala fundraiser that brought in significant portion of the budget. But they hired basically an event planning party that did that all the time. And so, it's not cheap. And in this case, the board was very active. They were very well connected to lots of people with money. The organization was doing really great work. So it was, we were very fortunate that ultimately that expense was, pretty small. We made our money back.
That's great.
But yeah, it does the kind of scale. I love the, including the Native artists and that kind of work, but it does take a lot. It does take a lot.
And then you're depending on Native artists too to either give away their work or for people who own their work to donate it so that you can have the fundraiser. So it does take a little bit of coordinating. Hey, and if any of y'all out there want to help volunteer and help us pull together a good fundraiser for what Alli's talking about or what we talk about in this program, we would love to have you. There's a lot of work to do and we can't do it alone.
100%. That's why I like sponsors, corporate sponsors, because you can use your network if you have it to go in and get meetings and say, hey, listen, y'all need to be doing more in this diversity space. And when was the last time you helped some Indians whose land you have your company on? I mean, I don't say it like that. I have a little more finesse, but
I've had a couple of actual small businesses lately that have been called out because of their name. There was a UK record company called One Little Indian, and I think they represent Bjork and some other artists, and they were called out by someone and actually changed their name to One Little Independent, so they still have the same acronym. But in doing so, they said, what we're going to do is we're going to donate to some Native American nonprofits. And so the association was happy to receive a $1,500 donation from that company. And there's been a couple that have done that recently, which has been kind of surprising because that's not usually how we get funding for the organization. Usually we have to wait for people to die. And then
I was going to just say, hit up the team formerly known as the R Word.
Oh, the Redskins? We could give them a, I'm going to say it.
The team formerly known as the Redskins. I see that nowadays they're called the Washington football team, which I think it's funny, but there's a question in the comments here. She asks, how or what is the best way to get on larger platforms?
To do what exactly are we asking?
Podcasting or like the YouTube. Well, YouTube's I don't know. Would you consider YouTube to be a large platform?
Well, it depends what she means, because anybody can be on YouTube. If she means corporate networks, then for that, it's not happenstance. You really have to spend years generally meeting people and knowing people. And if you are a young if we're talking about journalism or young filmmaker, storyteller, this is why the kind of program I'm suggesting is so vital, because you can't get anywhere without contacts. You really can't. And that takes years and being in the right place at the right time. There's no luck involved, in my opinion. I mean, there's always people who, maybe in acting, people get picked as a starlet because they're beautiful or something like that. And that's always historically been the case. But to be a good journalist, that you got to, cut your teeth, and you have to spend generally a lot of years paying your dues. However, the best way to get your foot in is always to do an internship. So if you're in a local market and you want to be a producer, I don't know exactly specifically what she's referring to in terms of what role someone wants to play, but if you want to work in a larger company that provides a better access to a voice, then you need to put your foot in as an intern at a young age and just keep at it and learn the craft. If you can't afford to go to school, then work a job and have an internship, and you have to start somewhere. But there's not, in a very generalized sense, you can't just be on somewhere unless you are a talking head and considered an authority in something, in which case a producer may call you, or you may make yourself available to a producer to speak about, say, Native issues. And then sometimes, you become a frequent guest and they like you and they'll call you anytime there's an Indian issue,
Yes, getting Native voices out there. That's That's what I find at the association. I just get callbacks from different journalists, and
Mhm.
who we build a relationship with and are able to help educate about Indian issues. Yeah, it's now is a really good news time. We've got a lot of news stories, both bad and good. Have you been doing anything, Allie, on the current state of affairs with either Indigenous Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, statues coming down, COVID? Anything happening in your world that you're
I personally took part in a number of protests right after George Floyd, and when things had started to heat up anew. None of these are new issues, of course, and because half of my family is of darker complexion than the other half, I am of multiple worlds here as usual, and I have not been doing coverage per se because that is not, my beat, and I'm not a blogger at this time. But I try to, and I've been actually kind of quiet on social media because of the national, my personal social media. Climate is so ugly now, coming up on this election. There's so much negativity, and then conflating it with COVID, and then like how at each other people are, that I have done a lot of observing, because I think as a journalist, you have to be very careful what's your personal opinion and what you say on behalf of other people. So I haven't been doing coverage per se. I've just been doing my own personal actions and participating locally and nationally as I can. I've been really disheartened to see how hard COVID has hit Native communities, and I have a lot of concerns about that. And one of the things that we hope to do with the subsequent episodes of 1,000 Years of Witness is to address health disparities, because I always feel like the way that I can be most helpful generally is telling the stories of the people who have experienced things. And so that's, I'm doing my actions as I go.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's great.
What I'm saying is you won't see me commenting a lot. I do it in a very curated way on social media, because I'm not interested in creating or being a part of more animosity right now. It's so toxic. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that I am not aware, I don't care, and I'm not engaging. Some of that is intentional, because I realize I'm not going to change minds and hearts on Facebook, or really not. I mean, if I could sit down and have a conversation with somebody, that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot. You can't make a racist joke in the room with me. I mean, how is that going to go down? Right? I mean, It doesn't matter who it's about. It's going to be offensive.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I love when it happens, because they don't know what hit them. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, I mean, you make Jewish jokes, or or racist Black, Indian, Hispanic. I'm like, really? Oh, okay, this will be fun. Let's go.
Well, and I think that's one thing that sometimes it's nice to be able to pass, so that you can hear those other dialogues that if our skin was really, really brown, we probably wouldn't hear in the same way. So we can always address things at kind of a different level that people don't expect. And
that's really, and that I like I said earlier, it's very important that I never lose sight of the privilege of passing, and that is a whole separate sociological discussion about race as a social construct that my late PhD carrying Black and Indian sociologist mother would have could have talked for hours about, but I will say that it is one reason that it is so important to me personally, and I feel that it is an obligation to try to help younger Native journalists and journalists of color come up. And as such, I'm a faculty advisor remote to the Maynard Institute of Journalism Education in Northern California, and I lecture and sometimes do seminars for their cohort of Maynard 200 Fellows, which is a sponsored in part, I think, by Google and some other entities, a 5-year program to train 200 new journalists of color over the 5 years it began and several years ago. So I've traveled around with them at intervals to lecture on entrepreneurial branding and journalism. And also, I'm a mentor for the International Women's Media Foundation, which is a program that was created for the late Gwenfell to mentor women journalists of color. So I recently completed the first year cycle with my mentee, who's a producer of color at Nightline in New York, and I'm soon to be assigned another one. So that just, to reiterate the import to me of reaching a hand back and helping someone else. And, they almost never look as white as I do, but, it's something it's important to me to always keep that front of mind, that I have an obligation to give back, especially to folks who will never have the opportunities that I've had.
Absolutely. That's great. That's great, Alli. So Kim, you got any follow-up questions?
I think I saw some legs. Oh, look, there's yeah, I have a little person who needs to go to bed soon. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, I would just sit and have coffee or wine and hang out and visit and ask you a ton of questions.
I would love that.
I think, it's just, you've had just such a varied experience, and I love storytelling. I love telling stories. I love listening to stories. And so I was really excited to be able to join you. I think a parting question, if we're going to wind down, I think one of my questions would be, if someone wanted to start the process of preserving story or putting themselves out there to tell story, where would a good starting point be? What advice would you have?
I love that question. First, it's summer almost everywhere. Maybe not in Europe. Never mind. Scratch that. If you are where it's humid, it's not summer everywhere. It's 5 o'clock everywhere somewhere, right? We're doing that. All I have is some old seltzer over here. See, if we were on TV, that would be, somebody would pay for that. It's Poland Spring, by the way. It's go and, immediately, do not pass go. Go find all your family photos and get them out of the attic or the basement. And either do it yourself or send them off to Legacy Box or one of these services that exist now and are inexpensive, and have them all scanned, because if you get bugs or a fire or a flood, those things are irreplaceable. And I actually, in my work as a personal historian, I often speak to estate attorneys and encourage them to counsel their clients, which most people never think of, that as you're creating your will, and this is something anyone watching I would encourage you to do, please make a designation for your family artifacts. And those don't have to be jewelry and fancy material things. To me personally, the things that are of greater value are the photographs and the documents that tell you where you came from, because when you're gone, your kids, or even if you don't have children, nieces, nephews, they may be tasked with looking through your stuff, and it really is a treasure trove and a gift of what you can actually leave them. That is not just money and stuff. At the end of the day, we don't really need that except the basics. And so I would say take all your family objects, your photographs, scan them or have them scanned. Any I'm going to say videotapes, because that was the thing that we had. You young people, don't call me boomer. If I see a boomer comment, I'm gonna punch somebody. So, boomer you. Yeah. So, but seriously, scan, or place your photographs in a climate safe place and save them. And then you can go through them, and they'll come on like a thumb drive or something. And that's the very first step. The second step is to get your family together. So you know how most people who don't live with an elder only have limited opportunities to have the elders together in, everyone sitting at the table telling stories. And we all know, like you said, Shannon, weak coffee or not, that, when you get folks together over a meal or a celebration, this is when the real storytelling comes out with all of the memories and the emotions, and it's not manufactured, right? And nobody feels pressured. So I would use your smartphone, or you can get a cheap audio recorder even, or use the audio function on your Android or your iPhone or whatever you have, and sit your elders down when these gatherings occur and just tell them, because you can't have a lot of background noise, but you really want to get them apart from the other folks once they're a little, loosened up, and ask them some questions. And I have a memory questionnaire that I use with my clients that's several pages long, but I'm always happy to share it with anyone as a guide for free, to guide a kind of a conversation, an interview that you can have with your elders, and do that, and save and put your photos somewhere safe and scan them. And those are the two best things that you can do to try to preserve your legacy for your kids, or preserve your parents' legacy, or if you're lucky, your grands. I know I'm a consummate multitasker, and being on camera for so many years, I simultaneously read prompter and comments. And so way back up there on the right here, I saw, one gentleman said, my grandma is 80 and she's just so beautiful still, and she's still sharp as a tack. And so this is the time now. I don't know if it was Johnny or someone else who stuck with us all this time, or Lance, but one of you said, she's 80 and she's still beautiful, and one of them parties hard, and good for them, and still keeping up with us, and one was 90 and just slowing down. So these folks, do not wait. If you do not know all of these beautiful matriarch stories, it's okay, don't feel ashamed, but do not wait, because I like to say there's there's no time like the present to save the past.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And it's free. Y'all don't have to pay anybody. It doesn't have to be fancy. You get your iPhone and you stick it up on a stack of books and make sure they're looking at you, and press play and just start talking to them, and try not to talk too much, because you're not important. They're important.
Right.
That's great.
I just sent out your 7th Generation Stories website again. Is that the best place people can contact you or learn more about what you're doing? What about your Alli Joseph website?
That's my personal talent site. I'm always, like most of us, always in the process of saying, I need to get to that, been a little nutty lately, but it's something I've been meaning to do. And so, yes, they can go to allijoseph.com. I don't check that email as much as my Gmail. But you can find me on socials. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Alli Joseph. I believe I'm the only Alli Joseph spelled that way on Facebook or otherwise. So you can follow me on Facebook. I'm at Alli2 Tribes on Instagram. I chuckle every time I think of how clever a handle that was. The first people and the chosen people. So my dad's Jewish American, and then the other side is Native and Black. So yes, Alli2 Tribes. And if you DM me, or I don't use Twitter that much. It's really a rabbit hole. I mean, it's not because I don't know how. I do not Snapchat. I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit.
TikTok.
So, nah, it annoys me. My dog.
So glad.
Well, here's the thing, and then we'll go, because I could talk forever. That's what people pay me to do, right? I have been around for so long in the digital space, longer than most, maybe almost any, that I have seen so many technologies come and go for connection and socials, that I no longer care about the new thing, because I know that it will be superseded shortly. sometimes very shortly. And some of them have, more longevity than others for various reasons. But, I'm not 12 and I don't care about TikTok. There, I said it. But my 12-year-old thinks it's very interesting.
Nobody tell Roy that we had a guest on that did
Doesn't
not
like TikTok?
like TikTok. Yeah, Roy.
It's like unraveling,
Yeah.
like a powwow shawl. You get one string. Is that a good analogy? And then like you're diverted on the side here, and then some other shit unravels, and then you're like, oh, but I should be looking here. Wait, I didn't fix that.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. I gotta go be doing something meaningful. I don't have I'm not a navel gazer. So no. And I don't need to be entertained that badly. So I don't really use TikTok. I know what it is and I know how, but
Thank you, Alli. Thank you. I'm so glad. I'm
waiting for the boomer comment. Now, my niece tried to teach me about Snapchat once, and I was like, nah. And that's how I feel about, TikTok is a little more accessible, but I just hate having to remind, college students and my goddaughters and stuff, like, it's not gone in a few minutes. You can't see it, but nothing is ever gone on the internet. So just come on, young people.
And just like Red Hoop Talk will never be gone.
It'll be here forever. And even if you can't find it, somewhere. So don't be saying dumb stuff. All right. Take it from your elder.
You're right, Alli.
It ain't gone.
It ain't gone.
No. Yeah, if you look back far enough, you can find me as Cyber Babe. That was a thing. That was my first. That was when I was on Prodigy. Yes, they decided that I was one of the first bloggers. I was a backpack journalist. So I had a 12-pound laptop from IBM, a ThinkPad that is now made by Lenovo. And that was the lightest thing they made in 1996, maybe. And I had a giant digital camera that looked like some underwater contraption, but I think it was a 2 megapixel camera, something to that effect. And so, but that was awesome then, it was like the biggest picture you could get. It was, so.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, I went around the country covering stuff, but yes, I was young once and I did know all this technology, and that's why I'm not jaded. I'm just aware.
Yes.
So, you can have your TikTok and I will just wait for the next thing.
That's great. Let's pass that along to Roy next week.
How old is Roy?
Oh, he's my age. He
just likes, but you know what? Hey, look, let me just say, people like TikTok. That's cool. It's just not for me. I don't want to cast aspersions. I'm not about that. Remember I said I'm not spreading negativity. I'm spreading the love.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different ways that we can express ourselves, and TikTok has some great like Native American folks on there doing really cool stuff, really funny stuff, and some good education there too. So hey, whatever you got to use it, because it's going to get to somebody.
Totally. Well, I'm kind of an atavist. Yeah. You can tell if I care about family histories. What do I I'm not like, looking for I'm not an early adapter. I know what all the stuff is. I just don't need it. So So, yay for Roy and TikTok, and may everyone enjoy what they like. It's cool. It's cool with me. Any other questions before I go and try to, hunt down and chase some dirty children who need bathing? Or a dog needs bathing.
No, I just want to say thanks. Yeah, it's Monday. I just want to say thank you. It's been such a pleasure to sit and hang out and visit with you.
All mine, women. And let's do it again. And anybody who wants to reach out to me, I will do my best to answer. And I'm always looking to help save stories and help empower people to do that themselves, and to continue in a positive way to help Native people tell their own stories.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alli. We're going to pull you down. We'll be right back with you, but love you, Alli.
Love you too. Thank you.
Oops, I think I cut her off there in a minute. Sorry about that, Alli. Well, we have our second show with our beautiful guest co-host, Kim, down in the books. How was it?
I love this so much. I thank you so much, Shannon, honestly, thank you so much for inviting me to come. I learned so much. It's so great to connect with new people and to just be part of the story and tell the stories and have these conversations. So thank you so much for inviting me. And I just want to, let Roy know if he happens to be catching this, I just want to say, I'm thinking about you and your family. And
And but we're not going to tell you on TikTok. Um,
no, TikTok, no, TikTok.
I'm still trying to figure it out. Anyway, so thank you, Kim, and thank you for taking the time to be with us and share yourself with us. Really glad to have you. Next week, we have an old professor of mine is going to join us. His name is Tom Holm. He's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and he's a retired professor from the University of Arizona, and was over there across the street. I don't know if you ever got a chance to go across the street when you were doing law over there. No,
Not very often.
Well, he is a scholar on culture, but also Veterans Affairs. So he's really going to have some interesting stories to tell us. He was one of the people I used to love to spend time with because he would tell these great stories that many public schools have removed, have censored and removed from their public school libraries about, why Native American men's penises are the size they are, and why they have flat butts and things like that. And so this is my professor Tom Holm. He'll be with us next week.
Oh my God, we're gonna tune in next week. Everybody, tune in next week for this one.
And of course, this is produced by the Association on American Indian Affairs. We could use your volunteer help. We could also use your donation. So go to our website, indian-affairs.org, and hit on donate now. And thank you so much for being a part of our family, our growing family for our show. Thank you, and Kim, and thank you everyone on our comments and chat line here. We really appreciate you being with us and using this for your Sunday church.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, good night. I'm going to end broadcast. Here we go.
Good night.